The year was 2042. Atlanta hummed. It was a city of tall glass buildings, a city of fast cars and faster data. Yet, beneath the surface of its modern gleam, a different kind of hum had started. This hum was softer. It was a whisper carried on the digital winds, and in community gatherings it spoke of return. Africa was calling. The African Union, with newfound strength and unity, had extended an open invitation. They called it the Great Homecoming Initiative. This was not just a call for tourism. It was a call for minds, for hearts, for descendants to bring their skills. They wanted people to help build a new future on ancient lands. The offer was generous. It promised land, support, and a chance to belong. The whispers grew louder each day in places like the Auburn Avenue discussions. They echoed in the online forums where people shared dreams and fears. Young professionals, tired of the subtle biases in their American lives, listened intently. Older folks who had long yearned for a connection to their roots felt a spark of hope ignite. The allure was powerful. It was more than just an economic opportunity. It was a spiritual pull. It was a chance to answer a question that had lingered for generations. What did it mean to be African truly? The AU's offer felt like a key to unlock a part of themselves that had been dormant. It promised a place where their blackness was not a qualifier but the norm. In cafes and community centers, projectors showed images of bustling African cities. Lagos, Nairobi, Kigali, Accra. These were not the images of poverty often shown in the past. These were cities of innovation, culture, and vibrant life. Young innovators in Accra were developing new solar technologies. Artists in Dakar were creating stunning works that captivated the world. The African Union's message was clear. Come, contribute, and be part of this continental renaissance. The promise was not of an easy life, but a meaningful one. A life where one's work directly contributed to the upliftment of a people, of a continent. This was a powerful magnet. The air in Atlanta, especially within its vibrant black communities, became thick with this possibility. Children asked questions about Africa in schools. University students debated the logistics and the meaning of it all. The return was not a fringe idea anymore. It was a serious conversation happening at dinner tables and in boardrooms. The allure was undeniable. It was a chance to escape the feeling of being a perpetual guest in someone else's house. It was an invitation to come home, to a vast and diverse continent eager to welcome its scattered children. The promise of belonging was perhaps the strongest pull of all. It was changing lives before anyone even packed a bag. Cairo Freeman was a brilliant mind. He lived in the world of code and algorithms. His Atlanta apartment was filled with screens. His days were spent building virtual worlds for a giant tech company. He was successful by all American standards. He had a good salary. He had a nice car. He had respect in his field. But Cairo felt a growing emptiness. The algorithms he designed felt hollow. They connected people, yes, but often in shallow ways. He saw how technology, his passion, was also used to divide and control. He saw how it often amplified biases rather than solving them. His heart was heavy with this knowledge. He remembered his grandfather's stories of a vibrant village in Ghana, stories of community, of shared purpose. These stories felt more real than the digital realities he created. He looked at his own children, Maya and Leo. He wondered what legacy he was leaving them. Would they always feel like they had to explain themselves? Would they always carry the weight of being other? The African Union's offer resonated deep within him. It was not just an idea, it was a solution. It was a chance to use his tech skills for something more. Something that nourished the soul, not just the bottom line. He wanted his children to grow up with the soil of Africa beneath their feet. His disillusionment with his tech career was a slow burn. It started with small observations, the way his ideas were sometimes dismissed, only to be celebrated when presented by a non-black colleague. The lack of diversity in the higher ranks of his company. The subtle, unspoken rules that seemed to govern who got ahead. He realized that no matter how brilliant he was, he would always be working within a system that was not built for him or by him. The Great Homecoming offered a different path, a chance to build new systems. Systems based on different values of community, heritage, and shared progress. The decision to move was not made lightly. He talked for hours with his wife, Kayla. They weighed the risks and the opportunities. Leaving Atlanta meant leaving behind familiarity, friends, and a certain kind of security. But the promise of Africa, of building something new and lasting, was too strong to ignore. Cairo envisioned using his tech expertise to develop educational platforms for children in their new home. He dreamed of creating systems that connected local farmers directly to markets. His skills, which felt increasingly meaningless in his corporate job, suddenly felt vital and full of purpose when he imagined applying them in Africa. The return was a reawakening for his spirit. Kayla Freeman was a lawyer. She was sharp, dedicated, and passionate about justice. Her legal mind was her greatest weapon. She had spent years navigating the complex American legal system. She fought for civil rights. She defended the vulnerable. But she, too, felt the limitations. The system often felt designed to maintain the status quo, not to truly change it.
The Great Homecoming Initiative is not just a personal journey. It's a monumental legal and political undertaking. It needs protection. It needs advocates. It needs people like me to ensure its success and fairness for all who choose to return.
Her role quickly became vital to the burgeoning movement in Atlanta. She began to study international law. She researched citizenship pathways. She looked into land ownership rights in various African nations. She became a leading voice in ensuring that the returnees were not just hopeful individuals, but a legally recognized and protected group.
We need to form a legal aid network. We need to help people understand the AU's offer. We need to help them with paperwork. We need to defend them against any who seek to exploit or hinder the movement.
Kayla understood that dreams needed structure to become reality. The Ancestral Network, a grassroots organization supporting the return, relied heavily on Kayla's expertise. She helped draft its foundational documents. She helped establish protocols for vetting members and ensuring their intentions were aligned with the movement's core values of respect and contribution. She was fierce in her defense of the network's integrity. There were always those who might try to take advantage or those who sought to discredit the movement. Kayla stood as a guardian. Her work was not just about legal clauses and documents. It was about building trust. It was about creating a safe passage for thousands of souls yearning for home. Kayla often worked late into the night. Her desk was piled high with books on African legal systems and human rights charters. She saw her work as building a bridge made of laws and agreements, strong enough to carry the hopes of her people.
When we arrive in Africa, we must not just be welcomed guests. We must be empowered citizens, ready to contribute fully, with our rights secured and our futures protected.
Her strength was a quiet, determined force. Ayanna Toussaint was an artist. Her hands brought color and life to canvases. Her Atlanta studio was a vibrant chaos of paints, brushes, and half-finished works. She painted the stories of her community. She painted their joys, their struggles, their resilience. Yet she felt a longing for a deeper connection, a connection to the source of the rhythms and colors that inspired her. America was her birthplace, but Africa was her muse, an unseen wellspring from which her creativity drank. She often felt her art was a translation, one step removed from the original language of her soul. Her personal struggle was one of artistic identity. She felt the art market in America often wanted a certain kind of black art that fit into neat boxes, often reflecting pain or protest. Ayanna wanted to paint joy, to paint futures, to paint the mundane beauty of everyday life through a black lens that was not always reacting to oppression.
I dream of a place where my art can breathe freely, where it can be in direct conversation with the traditions and aesthetics that have been passed down through generations, often invisibly.
The Great Homecoming felt like an invitation to find that unpolluted wellspring. When she heard about the AU's offer, it was like a new palette of colors had been presented to her. She imagined studios filled with African light. She imagined collaborating with artists whose traditions stretched back millennia. She saw herself teaching art to children, helping them connect with their own creative spirits.
The idea of return is not about escaping America. It is about running towards a fuller expression of myself. It is about finding the truest colors for my canvas.
She started sketching new designs inspired by African textiles and ancient symbols, her heart thrumming with a new, vibrant energy. Ayanna joined the Ancestral Network. She attended meetings, sharing her hopes and listening to others. She found a community of people who understood her yearning. She started painting scenes of the imagined return. Families stepping onto African soil, children playing under baobab trees. Her art became a beacon for others in the movement. It visualized their collective dream. Her personal struggle for artistic freedom was transforming into a collective vision of cultural rebirth. She packed her paints and brushes with care. Each tube of color, each well-worn brush, was a tool for painting a new chapter, not just for herself, but for her art in the land of her ancestors.
A beat for a new beginning. Darius Coleman, known to everyone as Dart, was a musician. His fingers danced over keyboards and drum machines. His music was a fusion of hip-hop, jazz, and soulful rhythms. He made a living playing gigs in Atlanta clubs and producing tracks for local artists. Music was his language. It was how he processed the world. It was how he expressed his deepest emotions.
But Dart felt a disconnect. The beats he made, the melodies he wove, they felt like they were searching for something, a deeper root, a more resonant drum. He played the sounds of the diaspora, but he longed to hear the source.
My struggle was with the commercial pressures of the music industry. I was often pushed to create sounds that were more marketable, less authentic to my inner voice. I saw how Black music was often co-opted and diluted. I yearned for a space where I could create freely, a place where the traditions of African music were not just samples to be used, but living traditions to learn from and build upon.
He listened to old highlife records, to Afrobeat, to traditional drumming. He felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing his musical spirit towards the continent. The Great Homecoming Initiative struck a chord deep within Dart. He imagined the sounds of Accra, the rhythms of Lagos. He dreamed of collaborating with musicians who carried ancient musical knowledge in their fingertips and voices.
I wanted to learn the kora, the djembe, not as an outsider, but as a returning son. I envisioned creating a new sound, a sound that blended the innovations of the diaspora with the deep traditions of the homeland, a sound that was both ancient and futuristic.
His music, he felt, could find its true home in Africa. Dart began attending meetings of the Ancestral network. He brought his keyboard to gatherings, playing soft melodies that seemed to capture the collective hope and anxiety of the group. His music became a soundtrack for their journey. He started composing new pieces infused with a sense of anticipation and purpose.
I wasn't just moving to Africa, I was carrying my music back to its source. I was ready to listen, to learn, and to contribute my unique beat to the vibrant, ever-evolving symphony of the continent. The return was a chance for my music to be reborn, to find its most authentic expression.
Weaving threads of heritage, I traced my roots to Brazil, to the communities of Afro-Brazilians whose ancestors had also been stolen from Africa. My connection was through stories my grandmother told of candomblé traditions, of orishas, of a longing for a lost homeland.
Isadora was a historian and a linguist. She had dedicated her life to studying the African diaspora in South America. She understood the pain of separation. She also understood the incredible resilience of culture, how it survived and transformed across oceans and generations.
The Great Homecoming resonated with my academic work, but also with a deep personal yearning. My struggle was one of fragmented identity. In Brazil, I was Black. In America, where I had come for further studies, I was Latina, or sometimes just other. I felt like a collection of labels, none of which captured the entirety of my being.
She spoke Portuguese, English, and Yoruba, which she had painstakingly learned. She knew the history of the slave trade routes. She knew the names of the kingdoms from which her ancestors might have come, but knowledge was different from belonging.
I longed to connect the threads of my scattered heritage into a coherent whole. The African Union's invitation felt like a call to complete my life's work, not just as a scholar, but as a person. I saw the return as a chance to bridge the divides within the global African family, to connect the experiences of the diaspora in the Americas with the realities of the continent.
She dreamed of establishing cultural exchange programs. She wanted to help others trace their roots, to learn the languages and histories of their ancestors. Africa, for her, was not just a place of origin. It was a place of convergence, a place where all the scattered children could finally meet and share their stories.
I became an invaluable asset to the Ancestral network. My knowledge of diaspora history and my linguistic skills helped connect with Afro-descendant communities beyond the United States. I helped frame the return not just as an African-American phenomenon, but as a global African one.
She meticulously researched resettlement options, focusing on communities in West Africa that had historical links to Brazil. For Isadora, the journey to Africa was a sacred pilgrimage. It was a chance to weave together the broken threads of her ancestral tapestry, creating something new, strong, and beautiful on the mother continent. The Ancestral Network was the heart of the Great Homecoming movement in Atlanta and beyond. It was not just an organization, it was a living, breathing community. It started small with a few families sharing information and dreams. But it grew quickly. It grew through word of mouth. It grew through social media channels. It became a powerful force.
The network used modern technology to connect people. Encrypted messaging apps kept communication secure. Shared databases held information about skills, housing needs, and travel plans. Virtual reality tours allowed people to glimpse their potential new homes in Africa.
The network was more than just technology, though. It was deeply spiritual. It honored ancestral traditions. Regular meetings often began with libations. Elders shared wisdom. Storytellers recounted tales of resilience and hope. They understood that the return was not just a physical journey, it was a spiritual one.
It was about healing the wounds of the past. It was about reconnecting with a heritage that had been forcibly interrupted. The network provided a space for this collective healing. It created a sense of family among people who were, in many ways, strangers, yet bound by a common dream.
The Council of Return was the guiding body within the Ancestral Network. It was made up of elected representatives, people like Kayla Freeman with her legal skills, people like Cairo Freeman with his tech vision. It included elders, artists like Ayana, and community organizers.
The council made decisions transparently. They liaised with African Union representatives. They managed funds responsibly. They resolved disputes fairly. Their leadership was based on service, not power.
They worked tirelessly to ensure the movement remained true to its core principles: unity, respect, contribution, and self-determination. They were the steady hands guiding the ship towards a new dawn.
The network also focused on preparation. There were workshops on African history and cultures. There were language classes teaching Swahili, TWI, Yoruba, and French. There were practical sessions on entrepreneurship and sustainable living.
They wanted people to arrive in Africa not as dependents, but as prepared, informed, and skilled contributors. The Ancestral Network was a testament to what people could achieve when they united for a common purpose. It wove together the threads of modern innovation and ancient wisdom. It created a strong fabric capable of supporting the weight of a historic journey. It was the engine of the Great Return. The day of departure finally arrived. The Atlanta air thrummed with a unique mix of sorrow and joyous anticipation. Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport was a sea of emotion. Families huddled together for last hugs. Tears flowed freely. Tears of sadness for what was being left behind. Friends, familiar streets, the lives they had known. But also tears of hope for the new lives they were about to begin.
The Ancestral Network volunteers, identifiable by their kente cloth sashes, moved through the crowds. They offered comfort, checked documents, and guided people towards the designated gates for the chartered flights.
Cairo held Maya's hand tightly. Leo was perched on his shoulders, wide-eyed, looking at the massive airplanes. Kayla stood beside them, a calm presence amidst the emotional waves. She gave a reassuring nod to Ayana, who was sketching furiously in her notebook, capturing the raw emotion of the moment.
Dart was there too, a pair of headphones around his neck, perhaps already composing the first notes of their African symphony.
Isadora moved through the groups, speaking softly in Portuguese, English, or Yoruba, offering words of encouragement and solidarity. This was it, the culmination of years of dreaming, planning, and struggling. The boarding process was orderly, yet charged with an almost sacred energy. Each step onto the plane felt significant. It was a step away from one history and towards another.
People carried small, precious items, a faded photograph, a handful of American soil, a grandmother's Bible. These were talismans of memory, connecting their past to their future.
As the planes began to fill, a quiet hum of conversation arose. Strangers became neighbors. Neighbors became family, united by this extraordinary voyage. The flight attendants, many of whom were from various African nations, greeted them with warm smiles.
Akwaba once said, "Welcome."
As the first plane, named the Sankofa, taxied down the runway, a hush fell over the passengers. Then, as it lifted into the sky, a collective cheer erupted. It was a sound of release, of triumph, of pure, unadulterated hope. They looked down at the receding lights of Atlanta. For many, it was the only home they had ever known. But their faces were turned eastward, towards the rising sun, towards Africa. The descent into Accra was breathtaking. Through the airplane windows, the deep blue of the Atlantic gave way to the coastline of Ghana. Green landscapes dotted with towns and cities stretched out below. A wave of emotion, even stronger than at departure, swept through the cabin. This was it. the land of their ancestors. For centuries their forebears had dreamed of this return, a dream deferred, but never extinguished. Now, they were the fulfillment of that dream.
The air in the cabin crackled with an almost electric feeling of arrival. People pointed, whispered, and some simply wept silently.
As the Sankofa touched down at Kotoka International Airport, another cheer, louder and more heartfelt than before, filled the plane. The doors opened, and the warm, humid air of Ghana rushed in. It felt like an embrace. It smelled of earth, of sea, of spices, of life.
As Cairo, Kayla, Maya, and Leo stepped onto the tarmac, they felt the solid ground beneath their feet. It was African soil. Cairo knelt and touched it, a profound sense of connection washing over him. Maya and Leo looked around with a mixture of curiosity and wonder, the sounds and smells of this new world captivating them.
On the tarmac, a welcoming committee awaited them. Dignitaries from the African Union, local Ghanaian officials, chiefs dressed in vibrant kente cloth, drummers played joyous, pulsating rhythms, dancers moved with an energy that was infectious. Banners proclaimed Akwaba, welcome home. The reception was overwhelming in its warmth and sincerity. Each returnee was greeted personally. Handshakes, hugs, words of welcome spoken in TWI and English.
Ayana's eyes shone as she took in the colors, the textures, the sheer vibrancy of the scene. Dart felt the rhythms resonate deep in his bones, a familiar heartbeat. The sense of purpose and unity was palpable.
As the returnees moved through the airport, they were no longer just individuals or families. They were part of something vast, something historic. They were the vanguard of the great homecoming.
I found myself speaking TWI with a welcoming elder, a conversation that felt like finding a lost piece of my soul. The struggles, the doubts, the fears of the past months seemed to melt away in the warmth of Accra's embrace. This was not just an arrival, it was a true homecoming.
The journey had been long, but a new chapter filled with promise and belonging was just beginning.